In the woods outside of town was a man who originally had wanted to know the secret of life, but eventually settled for owning a pulp mill. After every successful battle, the warrior would sit his son down and say, "Remember, if the allegories don't get you, reality will." And the philosopher sat on his child while singing, "And if reality don't get you, move on to even greater metaphors." 3 times a year, the king's minister of all important matters would stand center court and declare, "Oh, I say, I really, really do." Looking back over his life, one man said to his mind, "Well, you've certainly led me on quite a merry chase thus far." To which it replied, "What do you mean, led you? I was you." Then the rest of him chimed in to say, "So that's what's happened." A teacher asked the class, "Give me proof that civilization remains hopeful." And a kid replied that it continues to try and convince the simple of mind that they'll enjoy learning. Definitions from everyday life: awareness, a tunnel; attention, a train; an endless train, sans engineer. And now for your intellectual enjoyment, the world's last great IQ test. If you'll take such a test, you're stupid. A viewer writes, "Been watching you for some time. At first concern, couldn't see how everything you read from one page was connected. Now, no longer care. Yours over and under." Once this one guy realized how words actually align with reality, he could say anything and make himself like it. One of the first things people who want to become more conscious want to do is to show that they're trying to become more conscious. Why? In public mystic schools, the freshman class outnumbers the junior 10,000 to 1. Did I blow the last part? This is why in public mystical schools, the freshman class outnumbers the junior 10,000 to 1. And now that popular feature we call in-your-face factual disgrace. A man who does not clearly understand that life itself is alive and is, in all ways, not only of superior strength, but intelligence as well, well, such a man clearly does not yet understand anything about life or about being a man. "Daddy, what's the name of that strange new dog I just read about who thinks it's smarter than humans?" "Oh, I saw that article too." Now let's see, it was the National Geographic or maybe it was Science Today. Well, they discovered, that's the one they discovered in the southern Andes, or well, maybe it was Siberia. But at any rate, I know what you're talking about. And wherever it was and whoever it was that found it, I do remember that they gave that breed a totally new name befitting its totally new subgenus biological position. They decided to call the dog the, I can't say it, it's too cheap a shot. And the lad whined, "Ah, come on, Dad, you can do it. We're humans. Nothing's too cheap for us." I know as much as we all decided not to actually go into any kind of exposition, but see, I thought all of you would catch on since I just told you the one recently. So you were supposed to sort of catch on this new breed of dog they discovered. After all that wandering, that thought it was smarter than humans, and I said they finally decided to call it. So you were supposed to think that I was going to say something, or this guy was going to say, they decided to call it stupid dog. But see, he got down there and said they decided to call the dog. Then the father at least had the decency. He said, "Oh, I can't do it. You know, it's too cheap a shot." The kid had the last word, though, for all of us, right? He said, "Papa, we're human. Nothing's too cheap for us." For those of you in TV land who do not like explanations, fast forward. The operations are progress vis-a-vis intellectual certainty. The mental mechanics of the parade are run by opinion, assumption, and belief. Those requiring more have no business still marching with the rest of them. Today's fairy tale. Once upon a time, many, many years after their first direct encounter, a man again found himself face to face, eyeball to eyeball with life. And before he could remember how he blinked and looked away and got out of it the first time, life said, "Okay, now what? Civilians finis." And now for today's disturbing question. What is the difference between a real thinker and ordinary people? Ordinary people realize that thinking is just a part-time hobby. One guy sends along this definition: religion, a mystical bacon, lettuce, and tomato sandwich without the bacon, lettuce, or tomato. Come to think on it, that covers a lot of stuff, now don't it? But now on to an official entry from our New Intelligence Encyclopedia of Stuff. Article entitled, "How to Tell When to Pipe Down. When life wants you to shut up, you'll shut up." No. A man near third base shouted, "I've lost my teeth." And a fellow in the bleachers screamed, "All of my hair is gone." And just behind home plate, a chap said to himself, "Good thing they don't know about me and my thoughts." The weak will always blame the strong for being weak. Professor Elgin, is this in any manner applicable to intellectual matters? Oh, do shut up, you silly boy, you. I was playing both parts again. Yeah. Well, it's not easy playing Professor Elgin, for those of you that's tried it. One man now defines civilization as those brief periods between eating and sleeping and going to the bathroom. And your bonus round question, should you decide to go for it, is this view fresh and contemporary or old and outdated? Tonight's second feature, coming up immediately after the election results, is a film entitled "Everyone Loves an Outlaw Unless You're the One Just Robbed." Any real thinkers in the audience can, of course, skip this showing since they've are already mentally familiar with this concept. Our inspirational thought for the day. The mystical's only mystical to those who don't know what the hell the mystical is. The man set his bag down, then inquired of the chap behind the ticket desk, "How far is it to Stanislavia?" And the clerk replied, "As far as you imagine." The underappreciated great thing about the human mind is that it can invent board games and then spend the rest of its life continually rearranging the pieces in an attempt to discover their origin. As he was leaving the hospital, a reporter asked him if he had any advice to offer others based on what he may have learned from his ordeal. And the man replied, "I don't give advice, based on advice from my accountant." The title of one author's latest book regarding the nature of human existence is "Everyone is Born in a Car Wreck." His brother-in-law says they hope to eventually turn it into a new religion. A certain man with the beginnings of a freeway through his head asked, "What's the point in becoming more conscious if there's nothing to be more conscious of?" Are we sure that's a question? Still updating those previous updates. Inside every cynical philosopher is a dead, hopeful one. No. One guy said, "I am really tired of my mind thinking dumb things." And a friend asked, "Like what?" "Like the same thing more than once." A viewer writes, "If, as you say, life is specifically arranged so as to keep me just like I am now, then doesn't that mean that that's exactly how life wants me to be? And if so, then why the hell should any of this matter?" Hey, what kind of viewer is that? Pain. Everyone hurts at their point of least resistance. Pardon me, doctor, but does that include the mind? Include the mind? Include the mind? What the hell else could I possibly be talking about in the first place? Well, gee, it was just a question. Pain. You gotta love it. Today's mystical myth. Once he got started, this one guy couldn't stop. So his brother said to him, you should never even started. Words of wisdom. You just gotta love them. Two kids decided to have a civilizing contest. Tried to see who could lie the most. This next match again pits allegory against reality. One guy says, if Samson is born naturally with his strength, does it count? And another man replied, even if it doesn't, who's going to tell him? Well, at least, said one man to his dog, in the area of thinking, you don't have such a problem. And the dog replied, woof. Extended hours of awareness and beach etiquette. The best looking bodies can wear the skimpiest suits, and the most conscious ideas the flimsiest of supporting theories. One guy's bicep scoffed and said to his brain, hey, let's see you flex yourself. To which it, in the last 4 centuries, replied, rather than being so smugly confident, you should in truth be glad I as yet cannot do so any better than I do. Definitions. History. A record of man's retreats. Lessons learned therefrom. A record of man's failures. A mystic. A man in a mental bikini and absolutely no sense of shame. I don't know whether, there was one I didn't actually write down. It was a spurious, or at least a questionable news item, but it did come in over the wire, and that was, what do plastic surgeons and real mystics have in common? Is they can both hang themselves. One guy... allegorically, well, in one case, allegorically speaking, I assume. One guy's theory: if you have to explain why nothing bad is going to happen to you, something bad is going to happen to you. How to become educated quickly. First, be taught that there are different categories of things intellectual. Then be taught that some of these are more serious than others. Then believe it all and die! So that was the quick version. Yes, a mystic does know weird, strange, and supernatural things. He knows what's going on. Politics and the Civil Affairs of Man, a conversational essay. Daddy, is the meanest wolf also always the dumbest? Usually. Do you realize what this means? Yep. End of essay. Life wants you mostly to think about the same things everybody else thinks about, so you'll mostly stay like them. Another updating of civil life. Everything is merely a symptom of some deeper problem, which in turn is simply a symptom of some other deeper problem, and so on. A child asked his father, what's the difference between a real mystic and a pretend one? And the old man replied, the pretenders always believe that it's all a matter of behavior. And the young one noted, well, that's what they tell us kids about everything. And the elders, palms up. gesture along with his wide-eyed look seemed the only response required. Tag team definition time once again. Hormones. Mute neurons that know it all. Neurons. Verbal smart-ass hormones who don't know squat. Well, I say, Dr. Johnson, just where then does that leave the likes of us? I don't know about you, Boswell, but I'm getting the hell out of here before they start letting Attila dictate grammar again. What? You mean they stopped? And thus indeedy weedy, does the vast mortal parade of progress march ever onward. Sometimes seen as backwards, sometimes seen as sideways, but actually ever onward, right through the the mind of man. The fact that the simpler the person, the easier they are to please, should also inform you regarding the mind's possible forms of nourishment. The matter of the more conscious and their place of origin. A mystic ain't from nowhere. Just as there is no accounting for taste, neither is there for thoughts, which is why everyone tries to. While on a picnic, a lad asked his dad, "Is it my imagination, or is it the wider expands your consciousness? Does it not seem that the more others narrows?" And his father replied, "Have some coleslaw, my boy. Have some coleslaw." Henry McGee, Jackie Wright, for those of you keeping track. According to legend, there was once a mystical school who shot anyone who had been there more than 8 years or who was 40 years old. I got a better one for you. Any real mystic shoots himself every 8 years. And among other things is also how you keep from ever becoming 40 years old. The speaker loudly proclaimed, "You can't relive the past." And someone in the crowd shouted back, "Hell, you can't even relive the present." Give that man a mystical school t-shirt. A boy asked his father, "If we quit discussing ordinary life, might it disappear?" And the elder replied, "I'm not sure, but I don't think we should risk it." While the simple can only distinguish themselves physically, through fashion, or by some other comparative means, only the more conscious can distinguish himself through himself. As you see, the extremely gregarious St. Nicholas left us several here on the table. One said there's no accounting for taste. And if you will remember where we were talking last time about how the simple, that is, ordinary people, if they're going to distinguish themselves, which you are speaking in general that people have that inclination. It is hormonal, it is sexual based to start with, and it gets to the point in humans, although it is still recognized sexual in some cases, then it becomes other things such as people wanting to be a recognized famous musician or painter. To have any attention brought to you has, as always, a hormonal base somewhere. But when it gets into the more civilized areas, that we'll assume that you are now not just strutting around during rutting season, that you're just trying to get laid. It is now a more civilized interpretation of the kind of hormonal attraction that everyone wants to varying degrees. You attempt to distinguish yourself in ways that seem to be more civil, that seem to be more subtle, that would seem to be more artistic. But if you notice, I left you sort of with a rhetorical question last time, the simple simply being a distinguishing, non-judgmental term for the moment, that ordinary people, you at the ordinary level, to try and distinguish yourself, all you can do normally is physically. Even if it does not appear to be directly, sexual at the time, physically or through fashion. That is, you're hip, you like the latest music. If you can't write and play the latest music, you can at least say you like it. Or you can at least dance, we would hope. That you've got enough sense of rhythm, you can dance without breaking a leg. And if you can't do that, at least you say you like the dancing. And you always say, well, I've got, I pull my muscle from, The point is, you join in with whatever is fashionable. The most visible way is you join in by dressing fashionably, by appearing to be fashionable, having the right haircut, the right clothes, etc. And that is the way you distinguish yourself. And once again, if you recall, I had tried to get you to see a very interesting, it's a kind of connection that makes the term non sequitur go, what? That is, at the ordinary level, ordinary people normally prove their hipness, prove their individuality how? Through some sort of external display of being a part of some other group. That is, you show that, yes, I'm an individual. And the way you show it is, let's say that right now the hot thing is you wear a white shirt with your sleeves rolled up, everybody else, and you wear a purple hat upside down. And you say, I'm an individual. And somebody just got into town, they've never seen this, and they go, what? And if you think, well, they got any doubt, you kind of slide over, you get their attention, and they notice here is another group. Here's 40 or 50 other people dressed the same way. And you go, huh? Huh? That's not just sarcasm. It is not simply a non sequitur. It's why you don't find it funny. Good. I'm an individual. And the proof is because I'm dressed like these other guys. Or I'm an individual because I like what this other group likes. I'm in with the in crowd, as that famous Chicago American philosopher used to say, Ramsey Lewis. He went to another field. Taste is what I was trying to drag you to tonight. There's no accounting for taste. Now, ordinarily people account for taste on the basis that it is the prevailing hip taste, insofar as whatever allegorical neighborhood in which they reside. That if you turn to somebody, and for whatever reason got their attention, you turn to some guy and say, Jesus, that's ugly clothes, or I've never seen a haircut like that. And if for some reason he felt the need to defend himself, maybe he's your cousin, some young cousin or somebody, and you say, God, that's horrible looking. Then if he was going to be decent at all and try to converse, he might go, well, you don't understand. That is now the style. That you are accounting for your taste through reference to other people. That I do have support here. That my taste, in this case, they defend their taste by saying, wait, everybody else is doing it, a whole group of people. All right? That is the common accounting for taste. But now, I assume all of you know I stole, blatantly, a very old axiom to go with. That is, the axiom itself being, there's no accounting for taste. People's been saying that for thousands of years. It's true and it's not true, and we're about to get to the point. It's useful and it's not useful. It's individual and it's collective. And as always, the collective side is of no use. It's why it sounds axiomatic. And why you can say, turn into cliche, and other cliche heads go, hey, I like it. Explains a lot. Makes sense. Yeah, right. As long as you don't, you know what. So to say there's no accounting for taste, first off, there is accounting for taste at the crudest, simplest level. That is, when you are distinguishing yourself through your taste, which are simply fashionable. In that case, there is accounting for taste. That is, if you're an ordinary person, which all of you sometime in your past have been ordinary. I'm being complimentary. Sometime in the past you were ordinary. And so at some time in the past, whatever generation you grew up in, men wearing their hair long, men wearing their hair short, wearing bell bottoms, and then tapered pants, whatever it is. And at the time, there was accounting for taste. If we now pulled out an old photograph of you from the 60s or the 70s, and we went, that's you? And you went, ooh, and you'd say, and you could account for your taste. You'd go, well, hey, weren't you living in the United States then? That was the fashion. That was hip. And you go, oh, okay. So you understand, that's your accounting for taste, and that's the only basis for accounting for taste. It is a defensive move because you attribute it to the influence of your environment, of your peers, of hipness at the time. After that, we have a different situation. And it goes into, I'm fixing to try to drag your attention over into the individual, how to be a of less partisan, less mechanical consciousness that you can distinguish yourself internally. But there is like an interim step that affords, may I suggest, certain pregnant possibilities. I wasn't in town. I've never seen her before. We're talking about something else, right? I was just telling you about touchy people. Don't be so defensive. There is another area which all of you have experienced. Probably is in the first person, and you just never particularly thought about it. Let's say you're sitting around with a close friend, just one of your acquaintances, and maybe a certain kind of song comes on the radio. Something horrible, or a song is a good example. Something comes on that your father or mother should have liked. Something completely out of your generation. Lawrence Welk accidentally gets on your radio. You're riding on with somebody, and they start to turn it, or you do, and you go, I'm going to tell you the truth. You say, this is weird. Will you leave the station on a second? I can't explain this. I know how weird it is, but I've always liked that song. It's just you and one other like close friend. Or it could be food. It could be, but I was trying to get as far away from real survival, hormonal based, but a book even, or a movie. It could be some movie, and you know that the movie is unhip. I mean, you just know that the reputation. You just know. All you got to do is be fairly walking around hip, and everybody knows what's not hip. And let's say you and a friend's talking, and you go past the theater that's playing, and they go, have you heard what that movie is? And you go, yeah. As a matter of fact, I went to see it. I can't explain it. I saw like a film clip of it on TV, a review, and I can't explain it. That is, in a sense, part of what friends are, which Fly's not getting to, but another person, well, now see, that's like a step that's not normally taken into account. Now we're getting to the area because the person is saying now truthfully, or more truthfully, more validly in the dynamics of the electromechanical chemical flow of the human brain, the activity, they're saying, I should not be liking this, and I do, and I can't explain it. But I'm telling you because you're my friend, and I know horrible things about you, you've admitted, so I think... So I assume I can tell you, because I know you won't tell anybody. You're not ever going to use it against me. But I like. There's that one Lawrence Welk. There's this one polka song I like, or this. There's this one love movie I like, or whatever. That, you understand? I want you to see that there's a kind of continual. There's always a gradual spectrum. And no one takes into account the center part. The first part people don't even analyze. That's why they're defensive. That's why you're always defensive if it's something you do not have to think about, which is, if you never needed, that is proof again. I've presented it to you in many ways. Proof again that whatever it is that you're involved with, you have never thought about it. You're not aware of what you're saying. It doesn't matter what it is, whether it's talking about music, religion, morality, anything. If you're defensive about it, it's quite simple. You don't need a psychologist. I don't get paid by the hour. I just tell you this. You don't know what the hell you're talking about. All you got to do is feel defensive. All you got to do is make a statement about anything. Well, movies are the greatest literature. This is the modern version of great literature is now movies. And if somebody, just a stranger, just walks by and goes, are you serious? You go, wait a minute, let me tell you. There's your proof. There's nothing strange going on, because that is, for those of you that didn't catch it, one tonight said, 2 kids decided to have a civilizing contest. Yeah. All right, a civilization contest. I considered several versions, but I wanted to make your mind. They decided, hey, let's have a civilizing contest. They decided to see who could lie the most. Lie is not simply a dirty word. Among someone attempting to be more alert, lie is just really a useless euphemism. It's just a distraction. But it is on the basis that people, when they say, well, but also I threw in tonight, to take up the slack in another place, that the parade of progress is run, the machinery, the internal machinery of the great parade is run by opinion, belief, assumption. I could have gone on and on. I assume you got the point. That is, of people not knowing what's happening. The human intellectual machine is the only machine in the world, it's the only mechanics in the world that its parts got no idea what's going on. And it doesn't matter. Which is why I've said, to find out that the president of your country, the head of your church, the people running the whole world evidently, It's not something I can just tell you, but you'll finally see they don't know any more than your dog. They can talk and they dress better, or put another way, they do not know any more than you do on your worst day, which is frightening enough. And you think, wait a minute, the world's being run by people like me? Yes! But the point is, then after that, see, if you tried to tell ordinary people that, which satirists have tried to do, that is ordinary people, all the way from the Greek satirists, Jonathan Swift, and there's all kinds of nice Chinese and African stories of pointing out that, what a fool the heads of the tribes, and the heads of the kingdoms, and the people running everything, what idiots they are. And there's jokes all the way through, and they always seem to try to leave a sort of a sweet taste, like, well, it'll work out. Hell yeah, it'll work out. But what people, see, that's let everybody off the hook. Because if he just says, do you realize that our great chief, the man we've all worshipped, or the great king of the great northern kingdom, or whatever it is, we have worshipped his whole line, that he's been our rulers, and our temporal ruler, and our spiritual ruler, and now we find out the man is just a peckerhead, just a dunderbrain. You can't leave a story there. I mean, if you do... Well, if you do, it is not going to enter the annals of history. They will not be retold. It will not be recounted. Grandparents will not sit the new generation say, let me tell you the great story. If you just leave it there, it turns out that the one that we worship, we thought he was a God king here running our affairs, and it turns out the man had the IQ of a brick and didn't know anything. That just came out as the last moment. You can tell a story like that, and it's just, okay, well, I got to go. And nobody ever tells it again. Because then you got to sort of let them off the hook. Like, well, whatever. Go redeem yourself. They all have little morals. That's part of what a moral always is it's like it almost shoves life back point blank in your face, and you go, oh, and it says moral, and it lets you off. Which is kind of, the church, religion has their own version. Get to the end and go, up, don't you feel horrible? And you go, yeah. Okay, we're going to pass the plate and everybody contribute. Okay. God will overlook some of this, but, put something in the pot. Put something in the plate there. What I was going to say, if you can get past that, the real answer, your own secret, unspoken moral is to understand that the world is being run by idiots. That is, people as stupid, as limited, as unknowing as you are. But the moral is, hey, it don't matter. That's how you have to be more conscious to ever see that, and you realize, well, yeah, it's true, but it doesn't even make the smallest goddamn you can think of. It doesn't matter what kind of idiots. And in fact, if they are real idiots, then they stage their cool and they're in power. Like I said, it's one of these things that you hear about in such and such country. King so-and-so or General so-and-so who overthrew the king last week in a coup and took over last Thursday. You just have to turn on Sunday news, and it turns out that Friday morning his brother-in-law or some other people overthrew him. Life knows what it's doing. So if you actually get somebody as stupid as you are on your worst day, actually gets in power, he better steal and eat and drink all he can in a matter of hours. Because he won't even get to the bathroom, and somebody else had done out-cooed him. Back to where we were, accounting for taste. Yeah. There is this place where you cannot account for what you like in life. Now that's getting close to, remember these are very useless at a higher level terms like the truth and the lie, but it's getting closer to the reality of what humans are. Because if whatever taste you're describing, be it music, your philosophy, what you think life's about, if it is simply the same sorts of things that everyone else is thinking about, talking about, wearing, listening to. In other words, part of the collective thinking of humanity. Whether you be pro or con to the immediate environment intellectually, it's still, if life can keep you thinking about the same kinds of things everybody else is thinking about, it's got a good reason to do so. Because it'll keep you mostly being like them. It just keeps the parade orderly. Nobody gets too far out of hand. It doesn't care whether you like and agree with what's going on, as long as you got an opinion about it. As long as you feel, well, I got some taste. You say, well, I'm not going to put up with this. I got better taste than this. As long as you do that, you're marching right along. You don't even have to look around. It's not necessary that there apparently are people there with whips and chains making you stay in line. Now you say, hey, I'm glad I'm my own man intellectually. Everybody around me believes that and such. Not me. Ha! They're not going to fool me that easy. There you go. It's known as the intellectual prison without the need for bars. That's right, I don't see any bars. There you go. There is no accounting for taste at the ordinary level because the taste is everyone else's, or whatever crowd, whatever group of people you identify with. That's your taste. So you're hip, you're an individual, as long as you're liking what they like. That's simple enough. Then you get into the area that I was pointing out as sort of a bridge, an area of which is normally given no particular account. That is when you sort of have to not defend yourself. See, there's a difference between you defending your taste, but it's like an admission to somebody, like, I'm going to tell you something, your best friend. There's some polka music that I actually like. I've heard a couple of bagpipe bands, and I actually enjoyed it. See, it's not a defense because it normally comes about through an admission. It's not a defense. It's not you defending that. It's you just admitting to one person. But what you're then really getting close to saying is there is no accounting for taste. Because, and you might even said the words like, now I don't know how to tell you this. I have no Scandinavian ancestry that I know about. But I'm going to tell you what. There is some polka music with a good accordion that just knocks me out. Don't you ever tell anybody. And I don't know how to explain it. What you're saying is I cannot account for it. All right, now let's leave the area of so-called taste. There's no accounting the news item tonight, if I may quote it. The news item said there is no accounting for taste. Neither is there for thinking or for thoughts. Which is why everyone tries to do so. I don't know whether we'll get to that last part. But now consider there is no accounting for taste. Now I assume that you have followed what I'm talking about. There's no accounting. You just can't. And let's leave the whole area of taste for a second. Their ways, their taste, the reason I brought up both of them is their taste that apparently you had nothing to do with. That would be the easy way out to start with, and that would be the taste of your peers, that you are wearing hip clothes, you're wearing fashionable hairdo. That, when you can say, well, there's no accounting for it. That is, you could look back at a photograph from 10 years in the past, and other people be standing there and go, Jesus, that looks tacky. Boy, you look dumb. You go, yeah, but hey, that was a style then. I agree. So you can account for it because it was not your taste, is what you're saying now. You'll admit it. You can say, well, everybody was doing it. Jesus, I don't want to be the weird person out. I'd have never got laid. Nobody would have danced. I had to dress like that. My friends would have. That's the way it is. Come on. Ease up. So what you're saying is there is no accounting for taste, but I can account. In other words, I can't defend this taste because it was not my taste. It was this style. That was the only way I could distinguish myself. That was the only way I could apparently be a real person. Then into the area of an actual admission, not a defense, but the kind of admission to a close confidant that, hey, don't you let it out, but there's some polka music I like, and I got no idea why. None, but I just do. Now, forget taste, and let's call it thought. Why do you think as you do, if you ask somebody? Why do you feel as though, why are you a conservative in your political outlook on life? Or why are you a free market thinker when it comes to matters economic to fiscal affairs rather than a controlled economy? Well, let's don't make it too complicated because I'm just trying to figure out something we specifically talk about verbally. But you ask somebody, why do you think as you do? Why do you have the morality that you do? Or whatever it is. And of course they have an answer. But now I want you to follow the parallel between taste. Now it's not normally done. And if it was done out with the general public, somebody would take it as being blasphemous or being some sort of cheap shot attack. But hey, we're humans. Nothing's too cheap for us. That kid said so. I respect him. I mean, out of the mouths of babes. They asked me not to say words like that, though. If you ask somebody, well, why do you have a particular sense of morality? I understand that you feel such and such way about abortion or about gambling or about the consumption of alcohol or whatever, or marriage. They go, yes, I do, as a matter of fact. And you say, well, how do you account for that? Or, I don't feel that way. I feel it's somebody should do whatever they want to. I feel as though there's nothing wrong with gambling or whatever it is. And I always thought you were pretty intelligent. Where'd you get this? And they go, well, I'm a Catholic. No. They can account for their taste, which is the same thing as saying, well, if you say, why in the world are you wearing an inverted mohawk with purple and green stripes or whatever it is? That looks horrible. And the person says, well, all my friends are wearing it. I got no choice. Of course, ordinary minds will say, well, there's a great difference between the two. Write that down so I remember that. Yeah. You can account for your thoughts on the same basis that you, on the first stage, account for your taste. That is, I am simply a product of. You defend yourself by saying. And of course, in there, by defending yourself, when I say defend yourself, you do realize you do not necessarily have to simultaneously condemn the fashion at the time. That is, if somebody, an uncle comes to visit you, and you were a kid, you were still a teenager, and they went, good God, I hate to tell you this, but that haircut is horrible. Where the hell? And you go, hey, everybody at school has one. That's your defense. But it's also partly a condemnation of people who are not hip. And so if you said now to an adult and you say, well, how in the world do you have this opinion about certain moral matters regarding sex or gambling or whatever? And they go, well, I'm a Catholic. I'm a Jew. I'm a Muslim. And you think, well, they've accounted for their taste. But you can do it on the basis, when I say defend, you can do it on the basis of sort of a proud. That is, you're not really going to retreat much. If you say, well, how in the world can you believe that about sexual morality in the 1990s? And the person says, well, I'm a Catholic. And they can say it on the basis like, that's what Catholics believe. The truth doesn't change. The sense of right and wrong does not change. They can do it that way, or they could also put in a soupçon of, well, I'm a Catholic. It becomes sort of a psychological explanation then, like, well, I can't help it. My parents are Catholic, and I grew up that way, and half the time I don't want to believe it. But Jesus, it's like I get up and I'm hungover and I look over in the bed and I, who is this woman? And I think, oh, I shouldn't be doing this. And it's like it comes back to me. It is still a defense. Because what you're saying, you're laying out your thoughts. Slice, taste. Don't forget what I'm trying to parallel for you. You're laying it out on someone else. There's nothing wrong with it. That is the sequence. That is the kind of orderly stability necessary for civilization. And even though people who attempt to blame it, those who believe, well, I'm trying to become free of some of my outdated past. That is, I'm trying to get away from my father's religion, or I'm trying to get away from the kind of things that the previous generation believed. That's always going on. And so you can attempt to explain it, but then it becomes a kind of psychological accounting for taste. Like, yeah, I know sometimes I'll certainly turn and make some kind of judgmental statement about somebody else's morality. And you're right, I should be more sophisticated than that. I know better, but it's like you do not know how conservative and strict was my upbringing. My family all my family, Muslims. And you know how strict they are about certain matters. So if you're sophisticated as you go, okay, and you accept it. Or you can just say, well, it's psychological, it's subconscious traumas I suffered as a child. My father was a drunk. My father mistreated me. Okay. You understand, you have accounted for your thoughts. You've accounted for them. Now, it can be a blatant defense, like that is a kind of whining, as psychology would call it, a real defense that is, oh, no, I'm not responsible. Or it can be that it's more a statement of fact that, well, yes, I guess I do have a relatively strict sense of morality, but I'm Catholic, or I'm Jewish. I grew up. My family's Orthodox, and we have certain standards, and I don't see any great reason to argue with them. You have still accounted for your thoughts, but you've accounted for it in the same basis, parallel to how we started this accounting for taste. You are still accounting for it in the same way that you accounted for that ungodly haircut and those purple bell-bottom pants in that photograph we saw, and you went, hey, that was the fashion. That was what was hip, and so I had to wear that. Or I did wear it, and at the time it seemed right. That is part of why fashion is always more popular, and why it changes from generation to generation. It is sort of to give a relief from how slowly things change. In other words, look religiously. Yeah. We've had all the world's great major religions now holding on more or less, anywhere from 1,000 to 2,000, 3,000 years. now at 2,500, and kind of holding on, and they don't change that much. You know, you got Orthodox Jews, Reform, Liberal, but it's still kind of, you know, it doesn't change overnight. They don't suddenly announce, well, wait a minute, coming down the catwalk is this year's new fashion in Judaism. And suddenly they raise the skirt 3 feet. You know, it takes years. It takes years. But fashion, some of the people say, Seattle grunge music? Ah, gee, nobody listens to that anymore. You know, Pearl Jam and those people, that's a laugh. Mohawks? God, I hadn't seen anybody wear a mohawk. Gee, God, it's been, shit, it must have been 2 or 3 months. Boy, you out. But see, it changes fast. Back to the accounting for thoughts. Ordinarily, people account for their thoughts on the basis in the same way as they account for taste. Even though they say, well, there's no accounting for taste, until you ask them, they go, well, there is some accounting. And at first they blame it, or they attribute it to, they defend themselves on the basis that it was fashionable, it was hip, it was acceptable, it was the thing to do, the thing to listen to, the thing to eat, the place to go. It was the fashion. That's the way I distinguish myself. Now, thoughts. The first stage is the same way. You say, well, why in the world do you think that? Why do you have that kind of, why do you believe? Now, I know ordinary people say things like believe and etc., but you understand we're now talking about what goes on up here as opposed to what goes on out here. We're not talking about the hair on their head. We're talking about what goes on inside your head. So now you ask somebody the thoughts, well, why do you believe that? Why do you think that? Why is that part of your personality? Why does that seem to be? And the first stage is, when you say, how can you account for this? Give us an accounting of yourself, my good man. And you go, well, I'm an Iraqi Muslim. I'm a German Jew. I'm an Italian Catholic. I am a conservative Democrat from Nebraska. I'm a liberal Republican. I didn't mean to make it too strange. At any rate, you account for your thoughts in the same way that people account for their taste. Now back to the news item tonight. There's no, in the same way that there's no accounting for taste. It started off in the news item, I put in quotation marks. I say it to you so that you understand. I was knowingly quoting a very time-honored and hoary axiom, proverb. There's no accounting for taste. On the same basis, there is none for thought. Dash, which is why everybody tries to do so. People will admit under less than extreme duress, you can get educated people to admit that fashion, that is taste, are very whimsical, of no objective, well, usually they will admit, of no great objective value, because a person is not going to, no intelligent person is going to defend now, if they're saying they're not going to fall on the floor and fist fight you if you saw a photograph of them wearing purple bell bottoms from the 1970s and you laughed at them and they went, that's enough. Now, God intended man to wear bell bottoms. And you think, wait a minute, you know, is he confusing this with some kind of religious garb that some people wear? It goes, you know, you can't talk that way about, but yeah, it's silly. A sane person understands that there is no objective standard for taste, there is no stability, nor is it expected. That is part of the definition of fashion, is it changes. So a person will admit that. You can get them to admit that. But then if you say, well, how is your thoughts different from the taste you have? Of course, you try to do that to an ordinary person, they'd already get confused and dizzy and have to go get an Alka-Seltzer or leave you. They'd think, you know, what the hell's the point of that? Because they take their thoughts as being themselves. But if you insisted, just if you get them to fall into a semi-philosophical conversation, and you say, well, can you account at all? I've just never met anybody that had those particular strong views about some aspect of human behavior. And they go, well, you're right. I come from a very strict Lutheran background, some kind of background. My family was only one generation over from Norway, and they lived a very sheltered life, blah, blah, blah. You go, okay. So they accounted for their thought. Now the question I was going to present you is, why do you have to account for your thoughts? Why does everybody assume that they must be accounted for? Of course, I've already given it away. I already told you the truth. Because there is no accounting for it. Yeah, but you've just been talking about 50 minutes about how there is. Yeah, but you weren't listening. That was the joke part. That was the superficial part. That's the whole point of trying to account for taste. All right, we'll back up to these one. The whole point of trying to account for taste is because there is no accounting. Well, yeah, there is. You just said there was some. Yeah, but God, you weren't listening good, were you? Oh, maybe I was. Well, I'm sure you were. It's just, I don't know, it kind of made my head hurt. I got lost there. There is no accounting for thoughts. But no one will ever even take that into, if I may say so, account. People do not look at thoughts as being in any wise similar to taste. Now, thoughts, again, recall, ordinary people, even today, they might want to argue the word thought, especially if I was talking about morality and religion. And they'd say, wait a minute, you're beginning to get into things like feelings and beliefs. If you can't wear it, and it doesn't make you go to the bathroom, or it doesn't make you go to sleep or wake you up, and you can't do sexually exciting things with it, it's taste. You got to account for it. It's acquired. That is, it is not survival based, not directly. Then the question is, well, if it is that kind of non-essential that I could live without having taste. I thought that was going to be the joke for the night. Okay, I'll add the punchline. In fact, if you doubt it, just look around. The point being, the whole damn world lives without good taste, without taste. Shouldn't have had to say good. You made me do that. You can survive without, quote, taste. Think about it. Many of you have dogs and cats, and a couple of you children, but we'll let that go. Some of you have, dogs are like your best friend at home, and you talk to him. You think, how intelligent he is and all that. But notice, all you got to do is just a weakness for a second, and you've had him for years, and he's, as they call it, house trained, and still, you've got a hairball or something. He goes, and he'll just throw right up on your Persian rug, and not even think a thing about it. He doesn't go, If he comes in the house and you have on the radio Mozart playing, and suddenly just some reason you go there and you turn on something else, some rock music or country music, your dog doesn't go, oh. In other words, no taste. It's not a matter of good taste, bad taste. With animals, anything from the level of consciousness down in humans, from here down, there's no taste. Which is, as I pointed out before, is the difference between eating and dining. The body has no taste, not in that sense. Your body doesn't go, when you're hungry, we've been through this, you're not out there crawling on the desert, starving, and suddenly you come up and you look, and it's a McDonald's, and you go, is there a Burger King nearby? Or do you have any veggie burgers? I'm a vegetarian. Could you hold a mayo? And they go, no, they come just like it is, or no. The body has no, quote, taste. The body just eats, and whatever, and it, again, if you're sane, it eats that which will not poison it. It eats that which it needs. Start breaking out here, start looking for some vitamin B and cut down on the booze for a week or so. The body knows, the body has no taste. The body does not look at art. The body does not look at art. The body does not listen to music and go, is that actually Haydn, or is that one of those cheap rip-off guys that was hanging around Germany back then trying to copy good Papa? Boy, the body does not turn around and go, is that a Rivers or a Pollock? The body got no taste. If you tell the body, do you realize that painting, I know it looks just like somebody just threw a can of paint or maybe a dog threw up on the wall. Did you realize that thing sold for $2 million? The body got no taste. It's not going to go, how shocking. I mean, the body feels you an idiot already, but it's, this is no big deal. No taste is the point. Up here, it's all a matter of taste. And there is no accounting for it, which is why it must be supported by a running attempt to account for it. I'll try to slip it in on you again. Well, your understanding, as always, this is not an attack on religion. It is simply, it's the best all-around example still extant in society. But they use it in education. A running commentary, running attempt to account for your thoughts is such things as, well, education. It doesn't have to be just religion. It's education, or any sense of morality. A teacher says, well, or your parents say, well, it's not good to lie. And you go, why? And the teacher says, well, if you do, I'll flunk you. I'll make you stand in the corner. I should go back to religion. That's always the easiest. And you say, you shouldn't steal. Your body doesn't really hear it. It doesn't want to hear it. But and you go, well, why? And it picks up an extrinsic source to account for it because it says not to. It's a continual attempt to have to account for it. If man, tell you one from the other day that nobody seemed to like. Maybe you'll get it now. I'll drag it back out. That if you have to be warned about being civilized, you're still a danger. That is, the only really civilized people in the world, civilization don't mean shit to them. That is, they do not go around talking about it because they know it for what it is. But if you must be encouraged to be civilized, which now I'll slip in another one I tried to slip in on. Well, I'll bring out one I tried to slip in. That a teacher asks the class, it says, can you give me proof of how civilization remains hopeful? And one kid said, yeah. As they keep trying to tell the simple of mind, come on, you'll enjoy learning. You'll enjoy it. Yeah. They continue to do it. They've been doing it for thousands of years. Their public service messages now, about how we'll stop crime in the streets, how we'll get dope dealers to give up their evil ways. Get them in maybe a night school somewhere, like picking up and going back and studying high school chemistry, or maybe studying Greek philosophy. And as soon as they start reading it, they'll go, boy, this is a lot more fun. Civilization is forever hopeful, which is just a simple way of saying life rolls on. It's according to whether you kind of roll along with it, whether you're part of the roller or you're the rollee. Whether you're going to fall down, life is going to roll over you. There is the continual running attempt to account for thought because no one knows where their thoughts came from. We're down to the punchline. We still got any time on the tape? You cannot account for taste. Now we're down to the simple time. You cannot. Whatever your tastes are right now. We'll skip the first part because most of you are no longer teenagers. Right now, where it is you like in life, realize there's no accounting for it. If you're still trying to account for it, you don't even belong here. So we'll skip the sarcasm, the dramatic sarcasm. There's no accounting for your taste. Whatever you like now, you like. And if I said, come on, you got to tell me that, or I know I never want to speak to you again. How in the world do you like that kind of art or those kind of movies? The truth is you'd tell me the truth. Let's say it now. You go, I don't know. There is accounting for taste. There's the truth. I don't know. I just do. But then you say, well, how about thoughts? Because now thoughts, although ordinary people do not translate it as being equitable, their thoughts are what ordinary people call their personality. You remember the guy that told his mind, looked back on his life and he said, well, you led me on quite a merry chase. And his mind said, led you? Led you? I was you dolt. And of course a man's personality will go, oh no, I'm much more than that, which is true, but the part of him saying I'm much more than that doesn't have a clue. It says, oh, I'm much more than just that. And if I jumped in or some magic genie jumped in and said, all right, what? He'd go, well, I don't have time to go into it. It's none of your business. They can't account for it. So everybody understands you can't account for taste, but if you say you can't account for thoughts, you be gone from ordinary thoughts. You be gone from ordinary consciousness. But once you see there's no accounting for it, how shall I put it? It takes some of the vigor out of ordinary thinking. No. It takes some of the vinegar out. It takes, what's the word I'm looking for? I know I've said it before. Starts with an S. I think it's serious, but I was going to drag it out. It takes some of the seriousness out. Yeah. But then look around. That you've got almost a counter melody. If you look at the melody of civilized life being everyone expressing their thoughts, their opinions, their taste. It's all the same thing. You can look at it as being the main theme of civilization. From this level up, that's what we're talking about. Not survival based, but up here. But there's a counter melody. You have it just as well. It's a two-part fugue. Bach he's not the only one. It's at least a two-part, because running right along with it, parallel, simultaneously, is this: the continuing attempt to account for what you're talking about. In which what ordinary people are talking about is what they're thinking. So you've got all these thoughts, slash taste, slash opinion, slash beliefs, everything indigenous in the intellectual world. The melody is running on. It can't stop. A kid asked a father, said, what if we stop playing the music to it? Might it go away? I'm rephrasing it now. An old man said, I'm not sure, but I don't believe we should risk it. The melody runs on, but there's a counter. It's a two-part fugue, and going on simultaneously with it. Not only the thoughts, is the attempt to account for them. And the reason it goes on is because there is no accounting for them. And it's only ordinary people that spend the rest of their life going, why in the world, of course they usually pick on other people first, how in the world can other people believe that? How can somebody else be a Muslim? How can somebody else be a Jew? Or how can somebody else be an Italian? Whatever. How can somebody believe that? And then sometimes when it's turned back on, like, how can you believe that? You go, that is weird, but let me tell you about my childhood. Gosh, they attenuate. A man who knows what thoughts about would never account for his thoughts. Of course, a man who could think, nobody's got any business knowing what he thinks anyway. Because somebody else thinks they knows what you think, they're either wrong or you took a nap. You slipped up and you let somebody know what you think. That's when you think something, which that, of course, is the third possibility. But if everybody knows what you think, there's been a grave mistake made. So the point is, the way it works out is always justice prevails, and you don't have to account for it. But you can look at it withal. You can look at it from the other hand. If for any reason you have a need that you suddenly feel like, wait a minute, I'd like to stand up and express my thought about something somewhere. At least you don't have to worry about, am I overtaxing myself? Because there you are, taking a nap right out in public. Getting plenty of rest. Well, wait a minute, I believe I should stand up and counter what's being said here. I think an opposing view should be offered about right here.